Our first topic for today here is going to be about your first studio project, that is the branded 3D social media ad. I'm sure most of you are familiar with brands being on social media and their advertisements to you. Sometimes you can get away with not seeing as many. Sometimes you're sort of stuck seeing a lot of them. And some of them are, quite handy for things that you might be interested in. So up here, I have a whole bunch of examples, and I'm sure you can find many more on the web. Most of these are from Behance. Some of these are from Vimeo, or just other places I found on the web. I also have some of my other stuff up here as well. So some of these brands you might recognize. I don't know if there are any Mario fans or any Rocket League fans. I don't know how many people still play Overwatch. I think it's more Fortnite these days, but some of these might seem familiar to you, some of these might not. But all of these are examples of brands and sort of, in some form or fashion, 3D work being integrated into these designs. Some of these are pretty obvious 3D, and some of these are more sort of stylized and integrated. These are just some examples that I found. Yours do not have to look like these in any form or fashion. If you want yours to look more 2D or more, sketch and tune or more illustrative, you're totally welcome to do that. These are just some of the ones that I found that were visually appealing to me particularly. No, these are just ones that sort of stood out. And again, while I go through this, if anyone has any questions on how, one might achieve these sort of process, feel free to shout it out, of course. So these are just some examples that I found on the web. And then I'll show you some of the ones that I've done. So these are a couple of the ones that I've done for one of my jobs at CBS Sports Network. These particularly are monitor designs, so they go up on the monitors that you see in the TV shows on the various different, I guess, sports segments that you have up there. So some of these are just in regular, 44-inch monitors or 45-inch monitors. Some of these are floor to ceiling monitors, or screens rather, the way that they have them set up. So these are just a couple of ones. These are pretty straightforward. They're usually meant to just convey a quick message because they're not the main focus of the segment, at least not usually. Usually they might be the topic, but they're not the sole focus of what the people are watching. So I do have one question for these as I've gone through these is, how long do you think it might have taken me to make some of these designs? There could be any number, of time that you have for working on, particular projects. You might be able to guess a little bit more based off of what I've told you before for how fast broadcast work does work typically. But, and of course everyone works at different ranges. But I do see some answers coming in here. We got less than a day, 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days, 1 to 2 days, a day. Okay, these are actually pretty good answers here. And yeah, I think a lot of you are pretty close on this here. Saying usually around a day, 2 days, an hour. Yeah, so these ones, particularly for broadcasts, are very fast turnarounds. So the ones that are closer to a day in your answer are pretty close to it. Sometimes these do actually come around a lot faster. So less than a day sometimes happens for these. Sometimes less than an hour, depending on when we get the information for when the show's actually airing. Ideally, we would have a day or two mixed in with other work. It wouldn't be usually our sole focus. Some of your longer answers for a week or so are probably more apt for some of the designs on this side here. Some of these are actually really fast turnover around. Some of these you can actually get the breakdowns of how long it took them to do these if you check out on their sites or on the Behance pages. But yeah, so a lot of my stuff is pretty fast turnover, which, at the core of them is really sort of building your logo and then designing a scene around it. So, if you have a clear idea or a clear vision, it goes a lot faster in your design and development process. And today we will be getting into sort of the first stage of your sort of brainstorming your project. So you will have time in class for your first project that we're going to be doing here, your first studio project. And that's mainly going to be around sort of figuring out what it is that you want to do and sort of researching that idea. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. This one down here actually took a bit longer to do. Probably the core of it probably was done in a day to 2 days. And then over time, it took a lot longer to sort of refine it based off of what they wanted. So this one at the bottom probably took the longest to do overall. But that's just sort of the workflow for this particular design here. But it is a bit more involved than the other ones as well. But moving on here. So for this studio project that we have here, which is your studio project 1, it's going to be a branded 3D social media ad. So for this project, you're going to be creating a design in Cinema 4D, although you can composite stuff in it, like I've mentioned before. This one, because it's a studio project, it actually has specific submission specs, which is this image needs to be 1080 by 1350. So that's a 4:5 ratio. And this one has to be a still web ready image. And I've mentioned this before. And if anyone wants to throw in a chat what type of formats would be acceptable, I guess, for a still web ready image, which really just means you're able to post it to social media without having any issues, throw that in the chat here. But those are going to be, yep, there we go. PNG, JPEG, yep. Perfect. So those are the type of formats that you will need to submit for this project specifically. So no C4D file, because I'm pretty sure Instagram can't take a C4D file. No, nothing like that. Even though I can of course read those. And then for this one, the first part of this project, which is what's going to be due next week, which is not that date. Next week is the 7th. So let's update this in real time. So what's going to be due next week will be part 1 of your project. And that's going to be to pick a brand, develop a message or intended goal for your design. And that's going to be, geared towards who your audience is. And then you're going to have to, oh yeah, totally right. Yep. See, thank you for mentioning that, Evelyn. Yeah, Spooktober. Your design could even be geared around that if you really wanted it to be. That's totally cool for this one. But yeah, so submitted next week. You'll also be also submitting a sketch or design, or if you're not comfortable doing a sketch or design, you can also write out an outline of your summary. So either one is perfectly acceptable for this project. I usually just like to give this option because, not everyone's comfortable with doing a drawing. So I always like to give the option, and that's something that I do myself sometimes, is I just sort of write out sort of a visual description of what I'm going to do in 3D, just to sort of convey what it is. So yeah, so that's what's going to be part 1 of your assignment, and that's what's going to be due next week. And then part 2 of this assignment, which will be due in 2 weeks, and we'll change this date here as well to 10/14, will be the final rendered image, fully composited, web ready. So like some have suggested in the chat, PNG and JPEG would be the final format that you would submit for your image. So that's what's going to be due in 2 weeks. And then you can see down here, there's also a bonus if you're able to include any animation as well, which I will show a little bit about how to do that on probably next week's class. So that's what's going to be sort of asked for this project. So I'm giving you the the full submission specs for this up front here so that you have 2 weeks basically to think about this. If you really sort of want to get a jump, you can even get a head start on this. But next week, all you're going to be asked to do is just develop the message, who's it for, and sort of a sketch design or write an outline summary. And your design can be on paper or sketch, or it could be done on the computer if you just want to use like Photoshop or Illustrator to sort of, do your sort of quick sketch design of it. Either one of those is perfectly cool. But what I will show you up front here is some examples of what you could potentially submit, or just examples that I've developed. So on the side here, and if you already have access to the board, you can already see that up here I have a couple different designs that I have created, and these got pushed out of order here, so I'm going to put these in order here. But I'll zoom in here, and I'm sure that this is a bit hard to see on camera, but if you go to the page, and I'll drop it in here again, you can see these, better or probably on your own screens than via the screen recording here. But these are sort of the designs that I made. So these are super simple, not really good, drawings by any stretch there, but they convey the idea to me, or, potentially a client of what it is that I'm trying to do, in terms of my idea versus what my final design actually came out to be. So this one is based off of DC shoes, which is a skateboarding shoe. So this is sort of the idea that I had for this one. And as you go through all of these, if you look through these, you'll see that I have a couple different versions of what I designed, or what I potentially could have designed. And some of these worked, some of these didn't work in terms of the final result here. But these were sort of the starting blocks for my actual designs here. And sometimes you'll have time to do this on a real project. Sometimes you won't have a lot of time to do this on a project. Every project is differently. Fortunately for you in this class, you're going to have a week to sort of plan out. And, if your ideas and thoughts do change later on, that is actually, okay. You just have to sort of, explain that, things change or different things came up in the production workflow, which is, your way of working on this project. But for next week, these are the sort of, sketch type of designs you could potentially submit for your own brand. And what I'm actually going to give you time to do now in class, right up in the beginning here, it's going to give you time to sort of research and find a brand that you might potentially want to use. So over here, I have a quick little example of what you can do on the in-class workboard. So I'm going to give everyone, say, 15-20 minutes right up here at the start to basically search around, figure out what potential brand you might want to do. Of course, you can, potentially have a couple different options, but I'm going to ask for at least one for the online board right now. At least one. If you can find two, that's totally cool as well. But the main idea is that you're going to find brands that interest you and find their logo for reference. Along with that, you're also going to find one piece of advertising that, visually appeals to you for that specific brand. So for me, I have, this magazine layout, and I have a couple other sort of visual elements that I found. And you're just going to post this onto the in-class workboard. So of course, this board is also over here. Hopefully you remember it from before. So in case you need this link when we come to it, let me put this in here. There we go. You're going to sort of make your own version of this using your own brand. It can be whatever brand you want. It could be food, clothing, design, video game brand. Games have their own branding. I'm gonna say for this one, unless the brand inside of the media of your choice is really specific, I might stay away from going that sort of meta on your sort of brand that you want to use, unless you can really find a lot of references for whatever the brand inside of a specific, choice of media entertainment that you're into, just to sort of make it easier on yourself. But whatever it is, basically just make a quick collection of different elements that you want to use in order to, reference later on. Of course, this board will be up over time for you to reference back or whatever. I won't delete anything like that. But yeah, so that's going to be your first sort of in-class assignment here. So right up in the beginning here, I'm going to give everyone at least 15 minutes, maybe more, depending on how much time people need. But I just want you to go around. You can find video clips, you can find GIFs, you can find just still images from Google Images. I'm sure a lot of you are well versed on how to research the internet for stuff. And if anyone does need help on this, of course, feel free to ask me. But yeah, so take 15 minutes, think about what brand or brands you might want to use for your first studio project. And, just sort of come to some sort of, consensus, I guess, of what, sort of makes up the essence of that brand. Another thing just to keep in mind, just in terms of future, is that this project, if you want to, can be something that you use for all of the studio projects if you want to. So after this one, there's one that's going to be dealing with a brand and using simple animation. And then there's going to be one that deals with sort of a more involved animation at the end of this semester. So if you wanted one that you can sort of build upon and maybe use as a reference later on, that might be something that you want to keep in mind as well. Of course, you can feel free to use any of the stuff you create in this class for any sort of future, endeavor that you might want to do. So just something to keep in mind.